After Sonic 2, Sega had reached a point where Sonic had become a full-time gaming icon. Sonic 2 was a global success, selling over 8 million copies, and Sonic CD had sold very well considering that the Sega CD was a commercial flop overall. So after this, Sega wanted to make a sequel. Yuji Naka, the head of Sonic Team at the time, was initially somewhat hesitant to make a sequel at first, especially saying that he did not want to simply make Sonic 2 all over again, and they wanted to evolve Sonic in a way that hadn't been seen before. They wanted to take everything great about the previous games and expand upon it, with better level designs and story. So Naka then agreed to work on it upon the condition that he would mostly be working with the Japanese team at Sega Technical Institute, as having the American and Japanese portions of the team work together on Sonic 2 caused quite a bit of developmental issues in the past. Sega agreed, and Naka and the team got to work. Alongside him was one of the new game leads, Takashi Iizuka, who later in 2008 became the head of Sonic Team after Yuji Naka left the company in 2006. During development, the team had to actually split into two games. One game was called Sonic 3, while the other was called Sonic & Knuckles. This was due to cartridge limitations and time constraints at the time, and this truly showed just how big of a project that this game is going to be, especially in comparison to the previous titles. Finally, on February 2nd, 1994, Sonic 3 released, and on October 18, 1994, Sonic & Knuckles released, and they received critical acclaim universally. The game sold 4 million copies. Both games by themselves are about half as long as Sonic 2, but thanks to Sega's lock-on technology, you could combine both games to create the true Sonic 3, called Sonic 3 & Knuckles, which is the game we will be looking at today. Now onto the story. After Robotnik's defeat in Sonic 2, he crash lands with the Death Egg on a floating island in the sky called Angel Island, where he meets Knuckles the Echidna, who is the guardian of the Master Emerald, which controls the power of the Chaos Emeralds. Robotnik sees this as an opportunity and tells Knuckles that Sonic and Tails are on their way to capture the Master Emerald, and that he is here to warn them. Knuckles then agrees to help Robotnik and stop Sonic and Tails. Shortly after, Tails gets weird energy readings coming from Angel Island, so he and Sonic decide to investigate. This is when they encounter Knuckles, who literally punches the Chaos Emeralds out of Super Sonic and runs away. And then the game begins, as Sonic and Tails attempt to stop Robotnik and his plans of world domination and rebuilding the Death Egg. And wow, what a setup. This is such a good way to set up the story of the game. Also, the new character, Knuckles, is really great. Throughout the game, he's made out to be somewhat gullible, but he has a unique edge to him that makes him different enough from Sonic. And before Shadow was created, this was really the main rivalry that you saw within the series, and it was really great at the time and still is now, even if it doesn't get as appreciated nowadays as it did back then. Now onto the gameplay itself, and it's mostly the same as Sonic 2. Sonic can still spin dash and jump all the same, but now he's got this new move called the Insta-Shield. By pressing the jump button in midair, Sonic will form an Insta-Shield around him, which temporarily increases his attack range and makes him invincible for about half a second. This attack is great for boss fights and is a great addition to Sonic's moveset as well. In terms of level design, it has a more different approach than Sonic 2, which is that while Sonic 2 prioritized pure speed over everything else, Sonic 3 generally puts in speed segments and platforming segments separately, and also includes more level-specific gimmicks with the main movement. The advantage of this is that the game has a bigger sense of adventure and feels more in-depth than Sonic 2, and it even gives more uniqueness and individuality to each level as well. It also helps with visibility too. The downside is that it can't be as speedy as Sonic 2 at some points, and for me personally I prefer this approach because it gives more unique opportunities to demonstrate its ideas and design in a way that Sonic 2 couldn't, because every zone felt a bit too similar sometimes. It also gives this game more replay value for me personally, as it feels like there's more to master and do in each level rather than just speeding by everything like in Sonic 2. Also, in terms of special stages, they have also changed. Now instead of needing 50 rings to reach a checkpoint like in Sonic 2, you just need to find a giant ring hidden in the stages. This is a lot better because now you feel more rewarded for exploring the stages, and you don't have to worry about getting hit like in Sonic 2. Also, the special stages themselves are fantastic. Instead of memorization-based stages that required a lot of trial and error and could get pretty frustrating at times, you're placed in a checkerboard environment where you have to collect all blue spheres, with the level getting faster the more you play it. This is my favorite special stage in the whole Classic series because it feels more fair and fun in comparison to the other ones. After collecting all 7 Chaos Emeralds, you get Super Sonic, but that's not all. Once you reach the halfway point of the game, you can start to collect Super Emeralds, which grant you Hyper Sonic, which is a more powerful version of Super Sonic that can double jump. This has been his only main game appearance, and he unfortunately hasn't returned since. But still, he's really good in this game and a really good reward for continuing to collect the Emeralds. Now, onto the soundtrack, and it's phenomenal. The beats in this game are unparalleled, and even better than Sonic 1, 2, and CD in my opinion. Each zone gets a fitting track that is not only catchy, but perfectly conveys your game state and the environment you're traveling through. Now, let us walk through the levels themselves. Firstly is Angel Island Zone, a great introduction zone that showcases the player to Sonic's controls perfectly. After this level is Hydro City Zone, which is a fantastic level despite being a water level. It might even be one of my favorite water levels in all of gaming because of its sheer scope and overall great design as a whole. After that we get to Marble Garden Zone, a very unique zone that is more vertical than the others. I really like the boss fight at the end too, where you're flying with tails in the air and all that. It's really good stuff. Next up is Carnival Night, and while it's a bit weaker than the other zones in the game, it still manages to be super fun because it has really fast sections and interesting movement mechanics. Next up is Ice Cap, and this zone starts off with a really sick boarding segment that I really like, and the music is also really good. Lastly is the Launch Base Zone, and this is the last zone in the Sonic 3 half of the game, but it doesn't disappoint. Great speed, platforming, and enemies to keep you on your toes, and the boss build-up is really great. After defeating the Launch Base Zone boss, Sonic and Tails see that the Death Egg is falling from the air, and we get into the Sonic and Knuckles half of the game, with the next zone being Mushroom Hill Zone. To be honest, this is one of my favorite levels in the entire game, and that's because it has great music, design, and really cool level gimmicks to play around with, like the bouncing mushrooms and all that. After that, we head to Flying Battery Zone, and this level is so clean, dude. The music is awesome. It's so damn good at taking the Genesis instruments and composing it into a way that is beautiful. In terms of the full design itself, it does prioritize platforming more than speed, which I think is completely fine because Mushroom Hill Zone, which was just before it, had a lot of speed as well. After that is Sandopolis Zone, which is considered by many to be the worst zone in the game, and I agree with that. But not only because the level is too long, but it's because it has the annoying ghosts in Act 2 that really overstay their welcome. But I still enjoy the zone for what it is, and it is merely a slight lower point in a game that already sets its standards pretty high regardless, so it's still really fun in the end. After that we get to Lava Reef Zone, which is absolutely great. It is a bit long and a bit weaker compared to something like Mushroom Hill, but it's still pretty awesome because it has a very unique aesthetic, design, and the music is great as well. After that we get to the climax of the game, Hidden Palace Zone, and this zone is just basically a boss fight with Knuckles, and the boss fight is pretty easy to be honest, but after fighting him, you get this cutscene where Knuckles sees Robotnik taking the Master Emerald from him, and he's realized that he's been tricked. Robotnik escapes, and when Knuckles realizes the truth, he tells Sonic and Tails that he's willing to help, and gestures to follow him. Sonic and Tails follow, and Knuckles goes to a teleporter that will take them up to the next zone, Sky Sanctuary Zone. And this is a really cool zone because you start out by seeing the Death Egg floating in the air, Knuckles opens the bridge for you, and you go on. You're really feeling like you're getting to the real end of the game, because it really just shows the scope and dynamics. During the level you face Mecha Sonic, where you'll fight a Sonic 1 boss that he's using, and a Sonic 2 boss that he's also rehashing. And after that you actually fight Mecha Sonic himself. And it's an overall pretty alright boss fight. Pretty fun, but again, kinda easy. Not as easy as the Knuckles fight, but regardless. After defeating Mecha Sonic, Sonic and Tails jump up to the Death Egg. And unlike a hallway in Sonic 2, this level is a fully designed zone, like everything else in the game, of course. And it's pretty fun. Challenging enemies, good platforms to test your skills on, and some nice spectacle here and there. After that we reach the final boss with Dr. Robotnik. He uses this giant robot, and first you have to hit its fingers, then you have to hit its laser hidden in its mouth, and after that Robotnik takes one last effort to run away, with Sonic stopping him again. I've always loved the setup of this final boss, because you can really feel Robotnik's desperation here, and the music fully conveys that super well. Have a listen to the last piece of music that plays within the zone, when Robotnik is running away. Finally, after that, you reach Doomsday Zone, if you got all the Chaos Emeralds, or Super Emeralds that is. where Supersonic or Hypersonic will fly through the air and catch Robotnik in his last attempts to escape. Where here he will use two mechs to try and run away. The first one you have to aim the rockets that he uses back at him, which is really cool. And in the second one you have to make Supersonic actually run into the boss. After defeating him, Sonic and Tails return the Master Emerald to Knuckles on Angel Island and save the day. Get this ending sequence. This entire ending sequence is masterful in my opinion. It perfectly showcases the story and characters in a way no Sonic game has even come close to before. And it really feels like the last main series classic Sonic game farewell that they were going for. And after that you can also play as Knuckles afterwards, whose story takes place after Sonic and Tails', and his jump is shorter and he's slower, but he can glide and climb walls. Overall, this game is incredible. They took everything amazing about Sonic 2 and just made it better, with an even bigger scale that literally forced them to split the game into two, which I still find extremely insane and ambitious. It's a game I've played since I was 7 years old and still love to this day, and is in my opinion, my favorite Sonic game ever made. One that set the standard for what Sonic can do and what he represents. This game is a masterpiece. Play this game if you haven't, it's absolutely worth it. And again, thank you for watching.